Wesley Daniels stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror of his tiny bathroom, wondering for the 100th time why he agreed to a blind date when he could barely afford rent, let alone romance. He pulled at the collar of his only decent shirt, one that had seen better days, and called out, "Harper, you ready, kiddo?" A small voice echoed from the living room. "Yeah, Daddy, Miss Jenna's here." Wesley exhaled, grabbing his keys and wallet, which currently held a grand total of $15, and stepped out to see his babysitter standing by the door, smiling warmly at him. Harper, his 6-year-old daughter, was already waving goodbye, her backpack stuffed with coloring books and snacks. "You're gonna be late," Jenna teased, tossing him a wink. "Thanks, Jenna. I'll be back by 10, he said, ruffling Harper's hair before stepping into the hallway. The city air was crisp as he made his way to the small Italian restaurant downtown. His stomach churned with nerves, though he wasn't sure if it was the idea of dating or the thought of spending money he didn't have. Inside, low lighting cast a warm glow over white tablecloths and clinking wine glasses. Wesley stood awkwardly at the entrance, scanning the room until he saw her. A woman in a sleek red dress sat alone at a corner table, a glass of water in front of her. She had long, dark brown hair cascading over her shoulders and an effortless elegance that seemed out of place in his world. He swallowed hard and approached her. Hi, are you, Amelia?" She looked up, and the most stunning smile he had ever seen lit up her face. "You must be Wesley." Her voice was soft but confident, and suddenly he felt like the floor shifted under him. He pulled out the chair across from her, trying not to seem intimidated. "Yes, sorry if I'm a little late." "You're right on time," Amelia said, her eyes sparkling. "It's nice to meet you." The waiter appeared, handing them menus. Wesley's heart pounded. The prices made him want to bolt, but Amelia didn't even glance at hers. "I'll have the filet mignon, medium rare, and the house red," she said with a casual smile, handing the menu back. Wesley panicked inside. Filet mignon? He couldn't even afford the breadsticks. He scrambled for the cheapest thing on the menu and muttered, "Just the pasta primavera. Water's fine." Amelia tilted her head slightly, studying him. "So what do you do, Wesley?" she asked, resting her chin on her hand. He hesitated, embarrassed. "I work at a car repair shop, full-time mechanic, and I'm a dad, Harper's 6. Her face lit up. "You're a dad, that's amazing." Most women looked disappointed when they found out. Amelia seemed genuinely excited. "Yeah," he said, a little thrown off. "She's my whole world." "I'd love to hear about her," Amelia said warmly. As dinner went on, Wesley found himself relaxing. Amelia laughed at his stories about Harper's wild imagination and stubborn streak. She talked about how she loved traveling, how she was passionate about charity work, and how she hated mornings. But she never said what she did for a living. He figured maybe she was between jobs or just didn't want to talk about work. When the check came, Wesley instinctively reached for it, already sweating bullets. But Amelia's hand shot out and took it first. "My treat," she said easily, pulling a black Amex card from her clutch. Wesley stared at her stunned. "No, wait, you don't have to." "I want to," Amelia interrupted, smiling. "Besides, you told me you rebuilt your daughter's bike from scratch. That's way cooler than anything I've done today." He chuckled awkwardly, feeling both relieved and slightly emasculated. Outside, the city lights shimmered around them. Amelia turned to him, her eyes soft. "Had a really good time tonight, Wesley." "Me too," he said, meaning it more than he thought he would. She stepped closer, and for a second he thought she might kiss him, but she just touched his arm lightly. "Can I see you again?" she asked. He blinked. "You want to?" She laughed, very much. Wesley grinned, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. They exchanged real plans, no vague, sometime promises, and he watched her climb into a sleek black car that was definitely not your average rideshare. As he walked home, his mind raced. Amelia was different. She was beautiful, kind, funny, and clearly used to a life way above his pay grade. Still, she wanted to see him again. At home, Harper was already asleep. Wesley tucked her in tighter, brushing a stray curl off her forehead. He whispered, "Maybe things are finally looking up for us, kiddo." He didn't know it yet, but tonight was the start of everything changing. End of part 1. Wesley tapped the steering wheel of his beat-up truck, parked outside a modest community center, glancing at the time. He had rushed straight from his shift, grease still faintly lingering under his nails, no matter how hard he scrubbed. Tonight was Harper's dance recital, and he wasn't going to miss it for the world. Inside, the gym buzzed with excitement. Rows of folding chairs were crammed with proud parents and squirming siblings. Jenna waved him over, saving a seat in the front row. Harper's little face lit up when she spotted him, waving so hard her whole body rocked. The lights dimmed and Wesley settled in, his mind drifting back to Amelia. She had texted earlier, asking if she could come to the recital. He had hesitated before telling her it was just a small, local thing, not really an event worth attending. She hadn't responded after that, and he figured she probably had better things to do. As the curtain lifted, Harper bounded onto stage with a group of kids in glittery costumes. Wesley's chest ached with pride watching her spin, slightly offbeat but beaming with joy. He barely noticed the whispering behind him until he heard a soft voice say, "Is that seat taken?" He turned, and there she was. Amelia wore a simple navy coat over dark jeans, her hair tucked back casually. She looked completely at ease, despite standing out among the sea of sweatshirts and sensible shoes. Without waiting for an answer, she sat beside him, her perfume a subtle note of jasmine and something sweeter he couldn't name. "You came," he whispered, stunned. "I wouldn't miss it," Amelia whispered back, her eyes locked on the stage. After the recital, Harper ran straight to him, throwing her arms around his waist. Wesley laughed, lifting her up, and when she spotted Amelia, her eyes widened. "Who's that?" Harper asked boldly. "This is my friend Amelia," Wesley said, setting her down. Harper studied her the way only a child could, suspicious and curious all at once. "Are you my daddy's girlfriend?" Wesley nearly dropped her. His face turned scarlet as he fumbled for words, but Amelia crouched to Harper's level, smiling warmly. "Not yet," she said playfully, "but I'm working on it." Harper giggled, apparently satisfied with the answer. As they walked out together, Harper swinging between them, Wesley cleared his throat. "I didn't think you'd actually come. It's not exactly glamorous." "Neither is real life," Amelia said, brushing her hair back from her face. "I like real life." At the parking lot, Jenna caught up with them, handing Harper her jacket. "Thanks again, Jenna," Wesley said, fishing a few crumpled bills from his pocket to pay her. Amelia's brow furrowed slightly, but she said nothing. "Anytime, Wes, bye Harper," Jenna called, heading off. Amelia glanced at Harper, then back at him. "Have you eaten?" He shook his head, was just gonna grab something quick at home. "Come with me," she said, "both of you." He hesitated, "I don't know if." "No arguing," Amelia said, opening the passenger door of a sleek silver SUV. Harper climbed in eagerly, and Wesley, feeling completely out of his depth, followed. They drove to a quiet part of town he rarely visited, lined with cozy upscale restaurants. Amelia pulled into a valet lot, handing over her keys without a second thought. Wesley's stomach twisted at the thought of the prices inside, but Harper tugged his hand excitedly. Inside, the restaurant was all warm wood and soft lighting, a live pianist playing in the corner. Amelia spoke to the hostess, who immediately led them to a private booth near the window. Harper's eyes widened at the fancy place settings. Wesley sat stiffly, trying not to knock over anything. Amelia leaned over. Relax, just enjoy it. A waiter appeared, rattling off specials that sounded more like foreign languages. Amelia ordered for all of them, something with chicken fingers for Harper and steak for Wesley. Once they were alone again, Harper peppered Amelia with endless questions. Do you have a dog? No, but I want one. Do you like cartoons? Absolutely, especially the ones with dragons. Are you a princess? Wesley nearly choked on his water, but Amelia just laughed. Maybe a little, she said, winking. Harper seemed delighted by that answer. When their food arrived, Wesley was shocked at how easily Harper and Amelia slipped into conversation, like they had known each other forever. He picked at his steak, which was hands down the best thing he'd ever tasted, but he couldn't stop glancing at Amelia. After dinner, Amelia excused herself for a moment. Wesley watched her cross the room, her movements graceful without being showy. He turned back to Harper, who was coloring on the kids' menu. She's really pretty, Harper said without looking up. Yeah, Wesley said softly. And she likes you. He ruffled her hair. Eat your dessert. When Amelia returned, her expression was slightly mischievous. I hope you don't have plans tonight, she said, dropping a small envelope on the table. What's this? Wesley asked, wary. Tickets. There's a charity carnival happening nearby. It benefits the Children's Hospital. I thought Harper might like it. Harper gasped, her mouth full of chocolate cake. Can we, Daddy, please? Wesley glanced at Amelia, who looked at him with an open, hopeful expression, nothing smug or expectant about it. All right, he said, smiling despite himself. Let's go. Outside, the night air was cool, and the city lights twinkled brighter than he remembered. Amelia offered Harper a piggyback ride, and the little girl shrieked with laughter as they made their way toward the glowing lights of the carnival. Wesley followed, his heart feeling strangely light. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't just survival pulling him forward. It was something infinitely more dangerous and exhilarating. Hope. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. The carnival lights stretched above them in a dazzling canopy of reds, blues, and golds, casting a dreamy glow over the bustling grounds. The air was thick with the scents of caramel corn and fried dough, and Harper tugged Wesley's hand eagerly toward the carousel. Amelia handed Harper a ticket, then turned to Wesley with a glint of challenge in her eyes. Race you to the line. He didn't answer, just took off running, Harper squealing with laughter between them as they darted through the crowd. They reached the carousel breathless, and Harper immediately chose a white horse with a silver mane. Wesley helped her up, and Amelia stood beside him, her shoulder brushing his. You're fast for a mechanic, she teased lightly. He grinned, feeling more like himself around her than he had in years. You're fast for whatever you are. She laughed but didn't elaborate, instead watching Harper with open affection. The ride began to move, the music tinkling cheerfully, and Wesley found himself studying Amelia when she wasn't looking. There was something about her, something vibrant and restless, like she was always chasing the next horizon. When Harper's ride ended, she bounded off the horse and immediately pointed toward the giant Ferris wheel towering above the grounds. Can we go up there, please? Wesley hesitated. Heights weren't exactly his thing, and Harper knew it. Amelia caught the look on his face and leaned closer. I'll hold your hand if you get scared, she said, her voice low and teasing. Harper clapped her hands together, already pulling them toward the line. Inside the gently rocking carriage, the city spread out below them in a breathtaking sprawl of glittering lights. Harper pressed her face to the glass, gasping at the view, while Wesley clutched the bench with both hands. Amelia nudged him with her knee. "Relax, you're missing the best part." He risked a glance out and had to admit it was beautiful. "I don't usually do this kind of thing," he muttered. "Maybe you should," she said, her voice softening. "You deserve good things too." Wesley didn't know how to respond to that. No one had ever said anything like it to him before. By the time they climbed off the ride, Harper was yawning, her energy finally flagging. Wesley crouched to zip up her jacket, and when he stood, Amelia was watching him with an expression so tender it made his chest tighten. They made their way back to the car slowly, Harper sleepily leaning against Wesley's side. Amelia opened the back door, and Harper crawled in without protest, snuggling into the seat. As Wesley buckled her in, he glanced up at Amelia. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to," she said simply. He slid into the passenger seat, unsure what to say. The drive back was quiet, Harper dozing against the window. Wesley stared out at the passing streets, wondering how he had stumbled into this night that felt so much like a dream he didn't deserve. When they reached his apartment building, he turned to Amelia. "Thank you for everything." She smiled, but there was something unreadable in her eyes. "Anytime." He opened the door and lifted Harper out carefully, cradling her against his chest. As he did, Amelia stepped closer. "Wesley." He looked over Harper's sleeping head to meet her gaze. Would you let me take you and Harper out again, somewhere special?" He shifted Harper slightly, feeling the soft weight of her trust and love in his arms. He'd spent so long keeping himself closed off, protecting her, protecting himself. "You don't have to." "I want to," Amelia said firmly. "I want to know you both, really know you." He hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Okay." Amelia's smile lit up the night. "I'll plan something, soon." He watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the city before carrying Harper upstairs. Inside, he tucked her into bed, brushing a kiss over her forehead. In the quiet, Wesley sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the darkened window. He didn't know what Amelia saw in him. A struggling mechanic with a mountain of bills and a 6-year-old daughter didn't exactly scream dream catch, but somehow she had chosen to step into his world. And part of him, the part that had learned to expect nothing but hardship, whispered that it couldn't last. Still another part, smaller but stubborn, dared to hope. The next morning, Wesley woke to the sound of Harper humming in the kitchen. He stretched, sore from the couch, and shuffled toward the smell of burnt toast. Harper stood on a chair, wielding a butter knife dangerously close to the toaster. "Whoa, kiddo, let's not start any fires," Wesley said, scooping her up. She giggled, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I wanted to make you breakfast." "You're the best," he said, kissing her cheek. "But let's stick to cereal, okay?" They ate together, and Harper chattered about the carnival, the Ferris wheel, and how Amelia was the coolest grown-up she'd ever met. Wesley listened, smiling, but a knot twisted tighter in his stomach. He didn't know anything about Amelia's world, not really. He didn't know what she did for a living, where she lived, who her friends were. Every instinct he had screamed that she was out of his league in ways he couldn't even begin to measure. Still, when his phone buzzed an hour later with a message from an unknown number, and he saw Amelia's name pop up with a simple invitation. "Dinner tonight, my treat, say yes." He didn't hesitate. He texted Jenna to see if she could watch Harper, then texted back one word. "Yes." The day passed in a blur of nerves and second-guessing. He dug his cleanest shirt out of the back of the closet, the same one he had worn on their first date, and tried not to think about how out of place he would probably feel wherever she was taking him. When Amelia's car pulled up that evening, he stepped outside, heart pounding. She climbed out, looking effortlessly stunning in a deep blue jacket and dark trousers. "You look good," she said, her eyes scanning him warmly. "You too," he managed. She opened the passenger door for him herself, and he slid in, feeling like he had stepped into another life entirely. As they pulled onto the highway, he couldn't help glancing at her. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," she said, her smile mysterious. The city fell away behind them, the buildings giving way to open roads and starlit skies. Wesley rolled down the window slightly, letting the cool air wash over him. He had no idea where this night was headed. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to find out. The car turned off the highway onto a winding private drive flanked by towering oaks, their leaves rustling softly in the evening breeze. Wesley leaned forward, unease prickling at the back of his neck as they approached a set of wrought iron gates. Without a word, Amelia pressed a button on her dashboard, and the gates swung open smoothly. He glanced at her, searching for a hint of explanation, but she only reached over and rested her hand lightly on his knee. The weight of it sent a strange, steady comfort through him. The driveway opened onto a breathtaking estate, a sprawling stone manor, with ivy climbing the walls and soft golden lights glowing from every window. A circular fountain shimmered at the center of the drive, its cascading waters glinting under the stars. Wesley sat frozen as Amelia parked near the front entrance, the house looming like something out of a storybook. "You live here," he rasped, his voice rough with disbelief. She nodded, unbuckling her seatbelt. "Come inside, Wesley." He climbed out slowly, feeling like he was stepping onto another planet. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to run back to his world of cracked sidewalks and noisy neighbors. But then Amelia caught his hand, threading her fingers through his, and he followed her up the wide stone steps. Inside, the house was warm and inviting, not the cold museum he expected. A fire crackled in the massive stone hearth, and the scent of something rich and buttery drifted from deeper within. Plush rugs softened the hardwood floors, and books lined an entire wall of the sitting room they entered. A woman in a crisp uniform approached, smiling warmly. "Good evening, Miss Amelia. Dinner is ready whenever you are." "Thank you, Marjorie," Amelia said. She squeezed Wesley's hand before letting go. "We'll be in the dining room." Marjorie nodded and disappeared down a hallway. Wesley turned to Amelia, his heart pounding. "You have staff." She laughed softly. "Only a few, they're more like family." He took a shaky breath. "You're not just well off, are you? You're really wealthy." She met his gaze without flinching. "My grandfather founded a chain of hotels, inherited everything when he passed." Wesley rubbed the back of his neck, trying to process. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted you to know me first, not the money." Her voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability underneath it. "I know it's a lot to take in." He paced a few steps, running a hand through his hair. "I fix cars for a living. I can barely keep the lights on some months." "I don't care," she said fiercely, stepping closer. "I care about you, about Harper, about the life you've built, not the size of your bank account." He stared at her, trying to find the catch, the trick, the reason someone like her would want someone like him. But all he saw was sincerity. "Come on," she said gently. "Dinner's getting cold." She led him into a dining room filled with flickering candles and a long mahogany table set for two. Wesley swallowed hard, feeling like he should apologize for every scuff on his boots. Dinner was a rich, savory roast with roasted vegetables and fresh bread. Amelia chatted about her travels, about the charity work she was passionate about, building homes for families in need, funding scholarships for kids who had no other way out. Wesley listened, stunned into silence by the sheer scope of her life. When he finally found his voice, he asked, "Why me?" She set down her fork and looked at him across the table. Because when you talk about Harper, your whole face changes. Because you work hard without expecting applause. Because you didn't try to impress me, you were just you." He shook his head slowly. "I don't belong in this world." "You belong wherever you choose to," she said, her voice unwavering. "And I want you in mine." He pushed his plate away, his appetite gone. "It's not just me, it's Harper. She's been through enough. Can't drag her into something where she doesn't fit." Amelia stood, walking around the table to stand in front of him. She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I'm not asking you to change," she said, "or to leave anything behind. I'm asking you to let me be part of it." The dam inside him cracked. He reached up, covering her hands with his. "I'm scared." "So am I," she whispered. He stood, pulling her into his arms, feeling her heartbeat race against his chest. For a long moment, they just held each other, the world falling away. Later, as they sat by the fire with coffee and soft music playing, Amelia said, "I want to show you something." She led him upstairs to a wing that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The rooms were empty, the walls bare. "I was saving this half of the house," she said. "I didn't know for what. Now I do." He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She turned to him, her eyes shining. "I want you and Harper to live here, with me." The air left his lungs. "Amelia." "Not tomorrow, not until you're ready, but I want a life with you, with her. I want to build something real." He stared at her, the enormity of it sinking in. His mind raced with 1,000 fears, 1,000 reasons to say no. But his heart whispered only one word. "Yes." He closed the distance between them in 2 steps, capturing her mouth in a kiss that was fierce and desperate and full of everything he had been too afraid to say. She kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, breathless, he touched his forehead to hers. "I'm all in," he said hoarsely. "Me and Harper, if you're sure." She laughed, a rich, joyful sound that filled the empty halls. "I've never been more sure of anything." They spent the rest of the night planning slowly, cautiously, but with a hope so bright it chased away every shadow. Weeks later, Wesley stood at the altar of a small, sun-drenched chapel, Harper beaming beside him in a dress of soft blue. Amelia walked toward him, radiant in a gown that shimmered like moonlight, her eyes locked on his. When they said their vows, there were no grand speeches, no flowery promises, just the raw, simple truth. A struggling mechanic, a little girl with wild dreams, a woman who could have had anyone but chose them. And when he kissed his wife, with Harper cheering loudly from the front row, Wesley knew, without a doubt, that he had finally found his home. Forever. Wesley tipped his head back, watching the last of the golden afternoon light spill over the wide, rolling lawns behind the house. The estate felt different, now less like a dream he didn't deserve, and more like a home that had been waiting for them all along. Harper's laughter rang out across the garden as she chased a puppy. A gangly golden retriever Amelia had surprised them with the week after the wedding. "Come on, Daddy," Harper shouted, waving him over with one hand while the other clutched a bright red ball. The puppy barked excitedly, bounding around her. Wesley shook his head, grinning, and jogged across the grass. Before he could catch her, Harper threw the ball with all her might. It wobbled awkwardly through the air, and the puppy darted after it, yipping with pure joy. Amelia appeared from the side terrace, carrying a tray with 3 glasses of lemonade. She wore a simple white sundress that fluttered around her knees, her hair tumbling loose around her shoulders. She set the tray down on the picnic table and shaded her eyes, smiling as she watched Wesley scoop Harper up and spin her around. "She's going to wear him out before dinner," she said as he approached, Harper still giggling in his arms. Wesley set Harper down, brushing grass from his jeans. "She's got more energy than both of us combined." Harper plopped onto the blanket they had spread out on the lawn and grabbed her lemonade eagerly. The puppy collapsed beside her, panting hard. Wesley took his glass and sipped, savoring the tart sweetness. He leaned closer to Amelia and murmured, "I don't think ever imagined life could be like this." Amelia reached up, running her fingers lightly through his hair. "Neither did I, but always hoped." They stood there for a moment, the soft sounds of the evening settling around them, until Harper's voice broke the peace. "Daddy, are we gonna do the treasure hunt?" Wesley narrowed his eyes playfully. "Treasure hunt." Amelia laughed. "I may have hidden a few surprises around the property. Thought it might be a fun way to spend the evening." Harper scrambled to her feet, her eyes wide. "Like pirates." "Exactly like pirates," Amelia said, handing her a small map drawn in crayon with excess scattered across it. Wesley took Amelia's hand as they followed Harper across the lawn, the puppy bounding ahead of them. They found the first clue tucked beneath a low stone bench, leading them through the rose garden where bees lazily floated from blossom to blossom. The second clue was hidden inside the old greenhouse, where Harper shrieked in delight upon discovering a small chest filled with chocolate coins. They ended the hunt by the fountain, where a final envelope waited. Harper tore it open and pulled out a note written in looping script. "Congratulations, Captain Harper, your greatest treasure awaits," she read aloud, her nose wrinkling in confusion. "What's the treasure?" Wesley turned to Amelia, who only smiled and nodded. He knelt in front of Harper, taking her small hands in his. "The treasure's not gold or jewels, kiddo. It's family, it's love, it's us all together." Harper's face lit up, and she threw her arms around his neck. Amelia knelt beside them, hugging them both. "I love you, Daddy," Harper whispered. Wesley's throat tightened. He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you too, sweetheart." Later, after Harper fell asleep curled up on the couch with the puppy nestled against her, Wesley and Amelia sat on the terrace, the stars sprawling brilliant and endless overhead. Wesley laced his fingers through hers. "You know, I never thought I'd get a second chance at a family." Amelia leaned her head against his shoulder. "You didn't get a second chance, you made one." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the night air. "You made it possible." She tilted her face up to his, her eyes shining. "We made it possible, together." He kissed her then, slow and sure, pouring every ounce of gratitude and love into it. She responded with a tenderness that stole the breath from his lungs. When they finally pulled apart, Wesley rested his forehead against hers. "Promise me something." "Anything," she whispered. "Promise we'll always fight for this. For us, for Harper." Amelia cupped his face in her hands, her thumbs brushing his cheeks. "Promise, with everything I have." They sat there until the stars blurred into a soft haze, the world narrowing down to just the two of them and the quiet certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The seasons shifted, and with them, so did the rhythms of their lives. Wesley opened a small auto repair shop in town, one he ran with a few trusted friends. Harper started at a new school, where she made friends easily and insisted on bringing the puppy, who she had proudly named Captain, to every show and tell. Amelia continued her charitable work, but now she brought Wesley and Harper into it with her. They spent weekends building houses, reading to children in shelters, and hosting community events on the estate's sprawling grounds. Their days were busy, sometimes chaotic, but always full. They laughed more than they ever cried. They argued sometimes about small things, the best way to organize Harper's endless art supplies, whether Captain was allowed on the couch, but the arguments never lasted. They always ended with apologies, kisses, and whispered promises in the dark. One crisp autumn afternoon, Wesley stood in the backyard, watching Harper race across the grass with Captain. Amelia came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "She's so happy," Wesley said, his voice thick with emotion. "She's home," Amelia replied simply. He turned in her arms, pulling her close. "So am I." They kissed under the wide, open sky, the golden leaves swirling around them like blessings. In the end, it wasn't the money, or the grand house, or the fancy cars that made their life extraordinary. It was love. The kind that was messy and real, and fought for with everything they had. The kind that lasted forever.